Today we are glazing a ham. This ham has already been prepared. I'll just show it to you here. This is a smoked pork ham. When you buy it, it comes in a plastic wrapper and then it's also in a mesh bag. What I do with it is I take the plastic off and I completely cover it in a large pot of cold water and I bring it to a boil, and then I keep it on medium. And I cook a ham this size for about an hour and a half. If you find that a lot of salt has come out of the meat, you should discard the water and do it again for another half hour. Ham can be very salty. In this case, I only did this once. You can see that I have trimmed this. This had a large layer of fat on it, and I trim it off almost completely where I can see the pink of the ham coming through, because we don't need all that fat. But on the other hand, we need a little bit because it's going to go in the oven and it's going to have a glaze on it. So for my glaze, I'm just going to rinse my hands here a minute. What I do is I take 2/3 of a cup of brown sugar and 2 tablespoons of dry mustard. Now I have to be honest with you, this consistency and the amount is very much dependent on the ham and how bitey, nippy you want your ham glaze to be. We like the taste of the mustard, but we do want a sweet glaze on there. So you mix that up and then you add, and here you have options. You can add orange juice, you can add apple juice. Some people like sweet pickle juice. It's not my favorite. So to that much, as I say, 2/3 of a cup of brown sugar, 2 tablespoons of dry mustard. I am going to add by half tablespoonfuls to my glaze until I get it to the consistency I want. And you'll see that in just a moment. So at this point, this is now 2 tablespoons that I've added. It has to be nice that you can spread it out, but you don't want it too watery. Now you can see that starting to get into a nice glazed look to it. And since each ham I buy is always different, and a lot of this is based on my own personal preference and judgment, I'm giving you my measurements as a guideline, but I would strongly suggest that you actually taste what you make as you go. And I'm going to taste it right now to make sure it's exactly the way I want it to be for the nippiness of the mustard. And I'm going to add just a sprinkle of mustard because it's just not quite where I want it to be. But again, that's very personal preference. There's the consistency we're looking for. And we're just going to spread this out on the ham. And then we're going to pop it into an oven that's preheating at 350. Now, one other thing I'd like to mention. In the summertime, you can do exactly what I'm doing. But instead of doing it in your oven, my husband puts it on a spit, on a rotisserie, on our barbecue, and he does a marvelous job. You certainly have to rotate it slowly because, of course, with all this sugar, it is going to burn if you're not careful with it. And that goes true. That's also true of your oven. You do have to give it a look every once in a while. And here's what I do. If I find that my glaze is running too much off, I scoop some back on and I reglaze the ham. The odd time I've even mixed a little more glaze because I'm not happy with the way it's covered once it's started to bake. And it's a pretty slow roast. 350 at the max end, 300 at the slower end. The ham is, you have to appreciate, it's been smoked and you've already boiled it, so it's not like it's raw. But you do want the flavor to, permeate the meat as much as possible in your slow oven. Kind of a messy job, this. And I get it into all the cracks and crevices. I let it seep down to where the bone is. This is a bone-in ham, by the way. And I'm going to give that a turn. This makes an incredibly delightful meal. Tonight we're having this with scalloped potatoes and probably some roasted Italian vegetables. Now, you know, it depends, of course, how many you're feeding from your ham. There's always leftovers with a ham this big. It makes delightful sandwiches. The glaze just adds a real, just a wonderful flavor. And with a Dijon mustard or a regular mustard, a honey mustard, you've just got a superb sandwich. Now, that's another thing I might tell you about the glaze. Some people don't like the brown sugar, they prefer honey. I've tried it both ways. For my personal preference, I go with the brown sugar because I find that the honey just burns a little too fast for my liking. Okay, I'm going to rinse my hands again. And as you can see, that's pretty much glazed all over. And I'm going to check that, and if the glaze comes off too much, then I'll just keep doing it. But it's covered, so I'm popping it in the oven now. So the ham's now in the oven. I'm going to leave it in there probably for a good 2, maybe 3 hours, relatively slowly, as I said. And when we come back, I'll show you what the beautifully finished glazed ham is like, ready to serve. Just taken the ham out of the oven, and it's fully glazed. Don't worry about the fact that it looks a little dark in the pan. Unfortunately, the brown sugar does that. And cleanup is a little bit of a chore, but the flavor is wonderful. So I'm just going to move this out of here and put it on my cutting board. And we're going to take a slice of this delicious ham. And trust me, folks, it's delicious. Can't do it that way because of my hand. Okay, here we go. Just hit the bone. Just going to fix around my platter, and you can see that's a fully cooked ham with a glaze. It's beautiful, it carves beautifully, and it's just delicious.